Bonjour à tous et nous vous souhaitons la bienvenue à cette édition du panel avec Epic Games. Mon nom est Nathalie Bergeron. J'aimerais vous rappeler, s'il vous plaît, qu'il n'y a pas d'enregistrement au cours de la présentation et nous vous remercions de venir avec nous pour ce panel. Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Bergeron from Epic Games. I'd like to remind you no recording of the screen, please, during the presentation. And I wish to, without further ado, continue with a warm welcome to our panelist and moderator. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Oh, hello, hello. Take our seats and get this started. So happy to be back in Annecy. It's been such a great welcome, been such cool, divine weather. We tried. It's one thing Epic couldn't do. Anyway, it's great to see these, like I said, familiar faces and to welcome you to our fun event. We're going to have some fun things to show. We're going to get through some quick introductions first. So I'm Karen Dufalo. I'm executive producer of content partnerships at Epic. Started about 2 years ago. Prior to Epic, I was a former Pixar, former Google, places in between. One thing I've been very excited about and working with in all my career has been in animation, but being a small part of putting stories, animated stories, out into the world. So the work continues. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Miles Perkins, industry manager extraordinaire over at Epic Games. So we have with us Mark Andrews. Mark is an Oscar-winning director, writer, innovator, high-energy guy, lots going on. Elizabeth Ito, my dear friend, writer, director, storyteller, and a recent Peabody Award-winning artist for her City of Ghosts on Netflix. What an accomplishment. Brad Lewis is joining us, Oscar winner, again, producer, director, executive, creator, and now co-founder of Spire Animation Studios. What doesn't he do? And Adam Valdez, renowned animation and visual effects supervisor, most recently directing a project with Apple called Prehistoric Planet. And he's going to share a new project with us today, a never seen before piece. We'll get to that title later. Okay, and let me set the agenda. As I said, we're going to show you some cool stuff, some new stuff. Miles Perkins, my friend and colleague, is going to kick us off. Over to you, Miles.
First of all, I kind of want to go back just a little bit so that we could set the stage for this conversation. In 2019, this is kind of the state of the industry. In 2019, the Epic Games kind of decided that, you know, animation is definitely a part of the things that we are doing, right? And so a lot of effort started to go into building tools and working with partners. And what we have up here is actually a culmination of a lot of work that's happened. But why has this happened, right? One thing is there's been an amazing demand for content. That's one of the aspects of this kind of perfect storm. Also a changing demographic in not only the creatives, but also the people who do the work out there. When I say a kind of changing of demographic, what I mean is people are familiar not only with the traditional workflows, but also with games and how you interact with a computer. Technology has changed things. And then to layer on top of all of this, the pandemic. So, you know, the one thing that I think we all know is that the future does not really look a lot like the last 30 years. But one thing about that is I think we, as a company, we want to make sure that we empower the likes of the people who are up here on the panel and really listen to everything that they're saying about their creative process, because I think that technology should not encumber someone. A creative should be able to be creative. Nothing should stand in their way from that. And I think as technologists, we want to make sure that that happens. So, as I said, 2019, we got together with a couple people, and I'd like to highlight one of the things that everybody is going to be able to share here very soon with Mark Andrews and Real Effects, and the Real Effects team did Super Giant Robot Brothers. And so let's take a little bit of a look at that right now.
The kaiju has entered the atmosphere. robots. Whoops! Something.
Oh, that is just dandy.
I'm Shiny. My favorite color is yellow, and this is my little brother.
And you are an inept version of a Rose-type Guardian-class robot, not my brother.
Is that English?
Current models suggest that the anomaly is a type of wormhole.
Let me guess. An evil empire sends kaiju through portals to exterminate native populations in order to exploit a planet's resources.
This just got interesting. This is my kaiju!
This is a disaster. Our fighting robots fighting.
Holy cow! Got you at 6 o'clock!
Impossible. My sensors would have...
The detriment now, sucker! Chest bump!
So I'm super excited about this, about the Supergiant Robot Brothers, not to use too many supers. But Mark Andrews, my friend, tell me a little bit of something about real-time workflow. Like, what does this mean to you as a director, as a creator, and also to your teams? Like, what has this meant for you in order to produce something like that?
Well, it's huge. You know, if you look at how we've been doing animation over the last 100 years, right? It's been very siloed process and almost assembly line. You can't move on until you get the art right. Then you go to 3D and you got to get that right. And then you got, you know, your boards and all that stuff. What this allows me to do for the first time is work more like a live action filmmaker, right? I get to work in context for the first time. I get all my characters built, their sizes are right, I get the sets built. None of this is final, but I get closer faster. So I get my actors on the mocap stage, I can work the scenes, I can rework the scenes right there instead of boarding and reworking, because I'm dealing with actual timing, I'm dealing with real time, right? So it's a process that moves as fast as I can think finally, versus how we've always done animation, which is slower. And then I shoot my VCams. I could shoot as much as I want. I'm giving my editors coverage, which never happens in animation. So it starts to become a very, very organic process, from the cameras to the acting to everything. And for a storyteller, that's what I'm reacting to. I'm not having to wait to see the result and say, oh man, this doesn't work, go back to the drawing board. I'm constantly reinventing in this process. And what being in the engine means in Unreal is it's a very flexible, robust system, right? To iterate as fast as I can think. And that to a creative, you know, a visual storyteller, that right there is huge. It's like me drawing and redrawing until I get it right. Now I can have everything. I'm working on the movie, I'm doing it once, not 3 times.
So you kind of touched on this idea of shooting footage or coverage, as it were. I heard a rumor that you were like turning over like 140 shots on Friday or something like that.
Yeah, usually. Yeah, or more. We talk in setups too, you know, in a typical live action, you may get 20 to 30 setups a day, depending on how many cameras you have. I just had Enrico Targetti, my DP. So it was just me and him on VCam, and we were turning around, you know, 50, 70 setups, right? Which goes off to editorial. So they had more than enough to work with. But that's another thing, I think, in animation. The editors in animation have a really hard job because they have to kind of invent the timing when they put the storyboards and assemble them into the reels. Now the editors don't have to do that. They're seeing the timing. So they get to look at the movie through their lens and make their own decisions. I think that's another huge win for this process, is the entire team is smaller, is grouped together tighter, and everybody from animators to lighters to modelers to surfacers all have way more authorship than they've ever had before in the old process. And I'm calling it old on purpose because this is the new process. You guys are all going to be doing this within very soon.
I want to shift, Brad. I want to talk to you. You're the CCO and co-founder, Chief Creative Officer for some of us here, of Spire Animation Studios. You have an amazing career in animation, to say the least, that does span that kind of, that kind of 30-year kind of thing. Now, you're doing something very new now. Can you talk a little bit about what you feel that, from a creative standpoint, what is it that you're trying to build now? What is different?
Well, I think we're hoping that everything's a little different, a little bit better. I'm as evangelical as Mark is about what Unreal brings in real-time workflow, but there's two creative experiences that I'm 100% matter the most. One is the creative experience of the crew. Honestly, from tip to tail, we work in these movies for a long time. So, and by the way, I just want to say I'm putting this through the feature animation prism because that's where I come to it. But we work in these projects for a really long time. We should the more contextual, creative information and conversations we can be having, both on the 3D design and build side, as well as the story side, as well as the animation, lighting, the whole process. It means everybody is engaged in the creative conversation with the director, with the key creative team. And that means, I mean, honestly, I think it was about a little over 25 years ago, we were building at PDI, the feature pipeline to do Ants. And we are now at Spire building the feature animation pipeline of the future, of the now, for Spire for Trouble. But what's interesting is the creative experience of everybody that works at Spire is, to me, the most precious experience. And I think one of the things, when we talk about the silo system, where we originally devolved to do that was, it was the only way you could get it done in feature, is let's break it up into a bunch of pieces, 14 departments, and we had to sort of go, assembly line. The idea with Unreal, the idea with this sort of production pipeline is that we can recombine those departments and recombine the creative conversation, which as a director, to be able your key creatives with you from the beginning of story capture and all the way seeing assets, 3D assets, like Mark mentioned about maybe they're only 30% accurate, but you're in motion capture and you're able to do it. So the second most important creative audience is our actual audience. And I also happen to believe that theatrical and streaming, 100%, the metaverse audience is our audience, and it is the audience of the future. They socially engage. They want to sort of grab these worlds, be a part of them. It's exactly what we want them to do. And by working in Unreal, we can build those assets while we're building the movie so we can have sort of an instantaneous engagement on both sides with the story and with the assets.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like there's this kind of sea change. Like, and I know from my own career, being around and doing this for the past 30 years, you see these things that shift. There are these little things that shift. But then all of a sudden there can be this big kind of revolution kind of thing. Do you think that that's what's happening right now? Or is this a small change? Is this a big change? Like, what is your perspective?
I mean, our theory is that, and I've had these conversations at different people I've worked with at Pixar, DreamWorks, and different places, is I believe that the really smart people, if you started a studio today, would be building it how we're building it, which is using tools of the future, not tools of the past. I mean, I realize it's not quite that simple, but I do believe that the real-time rendering workflow is a completely different experience, as Mark described.
Yeah. So I also know it's really hard. And so, because I don't want anybody to come out here, whoa, I'm going to make this, it's going to, tomorrow it'll be done. So you have something to show us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'll sort of talk over this because we have sort of some making of footage,
Yeah.
and then we've got a little test piece we did.
Wonderful.
So what we put together, this is about 18 months ago now, we decided to do a test piece, about a 2 or 3 minute test for one of our feature films that we're developing called Century Goddess. Century Goddess is a story of a young girl who is born into an artistically suppressed country. She can only speak through spoken word, rap, and song. And ultimately, she runs into trouble with her father getting kidnapped, discovers she's got a once-in-a-century gift of song. She's a once-in-a-century goddess, and she ends up helping free her father and her country back to freedom. So we decided, let's try to do a little test. We need to know, if we're going to build a feature animation pipeline, what are the things that Unreal does well, and what are the things that Unreal we need to really sort of plan for. And over the course of our movies, we'll increasingly be writing code for that production pipeline, which is what we're in the midst of now. So these were some of the scenes that we did. We did a temporary setup where we were capturing the vocal performances as well as the physical performances. And I just want to emphasize that by being able to use the improvisational performances of actors driving characters in 3D assets and set assets that have some lighting, and we can be doing various camera capturing and so forth, is the way of the future. That is the way we can use great actors. And for us, as a director, I can have all my key creatives on this stage with me. I call it being in the room where it happens, right? So we've got animation in there, we've got lighting in there, we've got our camera folks in there, we've got our story folks in there, and we're all having the conversation, editor, the conversation about how we see it, right? As a director, you have to explain these things so many times to department to department to department, and in this way we can show it. And have the conversation, and we have all that knowledge, so that goes to editorial.
What I love about you sharing that, Brad, and I think you were doing this as well, Mark, is you work so hard on these stories and these ideas and the communication of it all, and now you find yourself literally in the story, right? And then it's not just you're making the point that it's your crew, right? And you're changing what's probably on the page once you're into the screen and into this process. And there's a feedback loop. And you and I've had a conversation, and you brought up a cool word that I'm stealing. In coming up with this final linear piece, you captured the story. You came up with this word sort of story capture. And I just wanted to see if you could share a little bit of that.
Yeah, what we call story capture is where the Unreal Engine tool with early assets, both character assets, 3D assets, like you saw in some of the video, is a way that the story team, as well as the director, can go in and start to work out the mechanics of the given story. So it becomes a tool not just of the director in that crew, but also becomes a tool of the story artists, so that we're actually making decisions in real 3D environment by which the movie is going to be made. And so it's integrated into the story process as one of the primary tools.
It's very cool. That's why I'm stealing it.
And that was, I know it's overused at ANSI, but you're the first audience that's ever seen that. It was just test footage, and I hope you liked it, but I needed to say that just so you can tell your kids. I'm sure they're going to be.
Well, we want more. So let's transition to my friend Elizabeth. Peabody Award-winning Elizabeth, director. So we want to talk about your next project from feature, from episodic to feature, now over to shorts, which seems a comfortable space for you. So we just finished and premiered, we had something to do with it, but we worked together on it, called Mall Stories. And I have a trailer here to show. Maybe you want to set it up a little bit first, Elizabeth, and then we'll get into it, because this is very much, Elizabeth, you have a certain vernacular in your work. Yeah, really. You can identify an Elizabeth work. So I think, and that's true here as well. Do you want to set this up?
Yeah, I have sort of cornered the market on animated documentary stuff lately. So this follows in that same vein. I really missed shopping malls. It's a big thing in California. I don't know if they're as big out here, but like specifically, there's the Burbank Shopping Mall, which is really close to where Cartoon Network is at, has a Mongolian grill restaurant that I used to go to more frequently than I should have probably, but it was really good. But the family there had a really interesting dynamic, and I think like over pandemic, I started wondering how like different restaurants that I liked were doing, and specifically that one I thought of, I think, because also there's like an interesting, just like you can tell it's sort of run by a family by the way they interact with people and the way that it's run. So I just really wanted to make a short about it, and yeah.
Well, let's show the trailer and then we'll talk on the other side of it. Okay, I'm pushing buttons. Here we go.
It's an Asian fusion restaurant, like a buffet style, where you get to pick your own vegetables, meats, and we put a lot of noodles and delicious sauce on it and cooking it on a big, flat, round grill. And it's really fresh and delicious. My dad is 72 now, so time to retire. And I mean, it's like any Asian father. He doesn't really show a lot of emotion, no excitement. It's either like, hey, do you want to do it or do you not want to do it? And once I told him that I'll do it, he just said, okay, then you do it.
So this is your first real experience with a game engine. And so I'm wondering how you approached that. Were you intimidated? Because I know you well, and I know how technical you are. Because we together were trying to like finish the keynote last night, and both of us were like, "Oh my gosh, how do we download a font?" But that didn't stop you. You're not supposed to tell that part. It's really on me more than you. But I'm just curious about, so your entry level there, right? I'm not saying it was intimidating, but it is a vast thing. It is a new thing. And talk about your entry and your approach to that.
Well, I play some games, so
there you go. So you have a mindset, though. You have a game mindset.
Like I had a friend. I just want to mention there was a friend I had, June Falkenstein, who's an animation director also, but she used to direct Machinima, which that it was like years ago, like maybe 10 years ago or more. And I remember thinking like, at first I thought that's really dorky. It was really dorky, but I also thought it's really cool that somebody has figured out how to use this game that they play to make movies, like their own movies about stuff. And I think I sort of approached it with that thought that you guys are developing this tool that allows people to create things in a different way, the same way like June was using World of Warcraft to make shorts about stuff that she liked, and I thought that was really cool.
Well, and also in our technical conversation, you mentioned you had a feeling of whimsy about this, and I love using thinking about whimsy when you're thinking about something technical. Of course, the technology doesn't make it, right? But that was your impression of it. And just talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, something that I really enjoy just in general in my work is like improvisational stuff. And that's like a really hard thing to get in animation, because so much of what you do has to be planned out, kind of like what everybody's talking about. Like there's a specific way you have to do that, and you can't like just sort of reset if you mess it up. So I think like there's this one aspect of the short that I thought was really fun, which is like at some point we had the idea to sort of make all these background characters have animated loops that they sort of went through, and we put them on a track so that in the background, every time you rendered a shot, you didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know what characters were going to be doing or who was going to be walking by. I think like there was some planning of it where you could time it, but it was randomized. And I thought that was so cool. It allows you to do this thing that leaves some amount of it unplanned by us somehow. And I think that's like the whimsical part of it, is that you can do stuff like that. You can experiment with stuff where I couldn't really do that on a regular TV production because somebody would have animated that
Right, reliably,
specifically.
right? Like
Yeah.
I need that to be exactly this way.
Yeah.
But you were able to kind of set things up and then be allowed to be surprised, and that is a sort of improvisational aspect to it. I think that is a common theme with all of you guys.
I mean, not to spoil it, but there's even a part, like one of the shots in the short that we rendered, and we liked the performance of it. Like, the character walks in front of the camera while somebody's talking, and I was like, "Can we keep that?" That was
right?
really funny.
Right. And another sort of new thing for you is as you were making this, I was also putting together this sort of animated film festival inside of the game Fortnite called Short Night, of course. Hopefully some of you saw it. And Elizabeth was finishing the film, and I was sort of fingers crossed, called her and said, what do you think about showing the film in Short Night and maybe the world premiering the film in Short Night? And you said...
Well, at first, like Kevin, my husband who runs Chromosphere, and at first I was like, no way, Karen. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we should put it in like real festivals. And kind of like, who do you think I am? But then I really thought about it, and I was like, I don't know, but maybe that is actually really cool because it's a whole nother avenue for people to see this. And I don't know, like, it'd be really fun to see people watching my silly film in the game, like in their, like, you know, dressed as like, I think there's one clip we have where somebody's dressed as like a banana, like watching it. And there's another, like I saw people recording themselves doing it or watching it on YouTube. And there's one where like this magician like makes himself a beanbag and then sits on it and then starts like flipping popcorn into his mouth. And I find it really entertaining to watch my stuff that way, to see how other people
It kind of creates something new then, because then they're filming themselves in it, and now it's this whole other parties. But I do have a clip from...
delicious sauce on it and cooking it on a big, flat, round grill. And it's really fresh and delicious.
So you're like, what am I looking at? Right, so this would have been just sort of one person's point of view in the theater inside of Short Night. So we'll come back to it. There's one other project that Elizabeth and I were able to work on the last couple of years called Yuki 7. And that was also produced at Chromosphere and with her husband, Kevin Dart, as the creator. And his first attempt of working in real time and working in the engine. And I just thought it'd be fun to share with you guys. They have another episode coming out, and we thought we would just premiere the poster for it. I'm trying to, and it's happening. There we go. And that's the poster for the upcoming Yuki 7 series that we thought we'd just sneak in front of you guys today, too. Thank you. Do you want to give a little shout out, anything more about Yuki 7?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because Kevin's really having a good time using the engine to create these really cinematic, it's like a board, but it's not a board because you're moving through it and you're getting to plan it that way. And I don't know, I'm just really excited for you guys to see what they're doing.
So he's sort of doing story capture in a similar way as you did, Brad, and maybe even with you, Mark. But you know, they're not doing the virtual camera. They're animating. Well, you're animating a little bit more in engine, but in Maya, but the capture is happening still in the world with game engine mechanics. So, okay, I think we're gonna transition over to my friend here, Adam. Let me find my notes. Okay, Adam, it's been so great meeting you and working with you and being a part of this next project. And we have a very special preview of it today. But before we get to that, I thought I'd have you set it up. We have this beautiful image that you provided, and why don't we, Adam? Why don't you kind of tell us a bit more specifically about yourself and a little bit about the project, and then we'll play the clip.
Yeah, so my background is in doing live action visual effects, but I actually was an animator when I started and animation supervisor, so I kind of always do live action movies that have a lot of animation, and that's migrated into fully animated movies like Lion King and stuff like that for Disney. And I just don't really want to go back, frankly, to doing live action anymore, because now that I've kind of come full circle and I'm getting to make entire things, the plasticity of it all, just chasing the final result, and being inspired along the way is so satisfying. So I had this pitch for a feature that turned into a pitch for a TV series that turned into talking with people about how to shop it in Hollywood, and then someone said, hey, you should talk to Epic Games because they're supporting like test pieces and stuff. And we had been already using the engine to do virtual camera and stuff for our other films. And so it was like, well, let's see if I can take the best of what I love about live action discovery and immediacy that Mark was talking about, and combine it with keyframe animation for style, and then let's see how far we can go for look. And then a bunch of my friends at MPC Technicolor, who their instincts are to get hyper complex, kind of all sunk their teeth into this thing, and it kind of becomes a runaway train in an exciting way.
You know, in your background, you've come from kind of workflows that are a little prescriptive. They kind of dictate what you're going to do. But then you've moved into things like, you know, embracing technology around The Jungle Book or Lion King. And now moving forward, what can you say about that progress and kind of where creatively you stand now? Because that's a hell of a spectrum, right? From that kind of visual effect thing to something like we're seeing here, which, to the best of my knowledge, I mean, this is like, you're still in the middle of this, but it looks like that.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, I think it's interesting how technology can affect process. I guess that's the story for all of us. Yeah, when I think what is common to live action and larger scale animation, at least, is that this progress of steps is often tied to money decisions. When should you start spending a lot of money? When do you know it's working? And so in live action, you're working with all kinds of other department heads to figure all these things out. And often, with big visual effects movies, at the very end, it's still not creatively decided, and you're spending a lot of money, and it's very stressful. And so in the case of this one, like just talking process for a second, this hybrid that I found myself in, I would work with a designer on the space, and then I use VR a lot, and I go into the space because that's where my live action brain kicks in. And I think like all of us are making, I like what Mark said, visual storytelling, right? The purity of it is a shot followed by another shot followed by another shot. And they're like parts of a phrase, right? And discovering what those shots are, and I do a lot of coverage, like Mark said too. I'm covering ideas, you know. There's the editorial step, but finding what those shots should even be, where the good compositions are, beautiful places to stage action, how the action, the set, and the lens are working together to build, you know, something that an audience can follow in the first place, and then has a point of view. I mean, I found being in VR in a space to be that discovery process, maybe the whimsy component of like where you're finding things, to be really fun and gives me confidence as a director to say, yeah, I like that. That's a cool thing. That's a good thing. That works. That doesn't work. Then hand it over to some keyframe animators. Then it gets slow, and you wait a little bit until they create what we call like a master scene, which then I go back in from my initial VR scout where I know kind of where I want to shoot. And now I have this new thing, and I respond to that again in the virtual camera process. So I kind of had my shot list plan-ish. I get my animation. It has some surprises. And then virtual camera, again, is fast and fun, and you're shooting all this stuff. Then by the time you're sitting in front of the edit suite, you're like, yeah, I have all this stuff to experiment with, and I haven't felt like I fought for every shot so much. and I didn't have to decide 8 months ago, I need this shot and I'll commit to it, I can kind of throw away. And so that sort of 20-100 to 1 ratio of creativity to final, you have multiple bites at the apple for that. And so that's where I've kind of settled in. Then the piece you're seeing, I mean, the other incredible technology aspects have been these face rigs are based on MetaHuman rigs, which is, you know, a big, I'm sure people who are into Unreal are aware of. And this was all rendered with the new path tracer that's just, you know, maturing into something really formidable. So, and then the ecosystem of Unreal welcoming in like Houdini engine. So there's all these mosses and all this set scatter stuff being generated procedurally by geniuses in another department. And so you have all these contributions coming in so that like our CG supervisors and other people that are contributing here were just having like a geek fest on all the stuff they could mash together. And I'm just like trying to dip into it, right? And keep the creative compass clear. And so like I had to figure out partially like how you get keyframe animators or people who are used to high complexity to participate in my journey and remember me along the way. And I guess that's the thing. The director can get lost in the process sometimes when the machine gets big. And so I found having Unreal be like the hub of everything naturally created story and sequence as the lead organizing principle for the whole thing. And that was sort of, I guess, the main leverage, you know, that you just keep coming back to the timeline. And then if you're a control freak like me, you can be like, just give me that shot and let me put the lights the way I know I want it, because I'll do it in 5 minutes. And a lot of these things are hard to explain. You get good at explaining a lot, right? Like Brad said, over and over and over and over, to the point where you're like, I don't even know how to talk about this topic anymore. It'd be more fun to just go in and move the lights around or re-camera that shot. You know, so it's very hybrid now, I would say, learning from all these kind of ways and means. And there's lots of ways to combine approaches, process steps, and tools now, where Unreal becomes the hub of how you might want to work. It just naturally is.
Yeah, I'm kind of struck here by, in listening to everybody and what they're saying here, the creative process is exactly that, a process. And not everybody does things the same way, and not everybody uses the same tools, but it does feel a little bit like the ability to lead with story first and not have to worry about the other stuff that usually goes into it. It allows you really to have that ability to get iterative with your content, which to me is also opening up opportunity for other types of creatives to come in and play in animation where they couldn't before. Mark, can you tell me a little bit something about that? And the second part, Elizabeth, you kind of touched on was the game part of it. So, and Mark, I want you to, because I don't know how much of that you actually wound up doing, but again, this idea of being able to, except for your shooting rig, which I do have to say is definitely game-like, first-person shooter camera, VCam for sure. But can you talk a little bit about that? Just the what you're able to bring to this, and what it means also to be able to bring in gaming technology.
Yeah. So I think one of the approaches that that we were doing, on the stage is you have this power of iteration all of a sudden, right? So we have our script, I shoot the scene, but you're seeing it in real time, So I think that's something that, as a director, I need to always pay attention to, that I'm the first audience, right? It's not just the idea, I'm the first audience to look at that idea and respond to that idea. So, which is very hard to do in animation because you got to wait, right? There's too much water under the bridge, and you've seen it too many times, and you've seen it separated. Suddenly now it's all together, right? But what it allows me to do, I remember this one moment on Supergiant Robot Brothers, I was waiting for something to turn over, whatnot, and we've got our the big screens around so I can see my robots. And we did a lot of attachments with puppets, right? So I could fly these 200-foot tall robots across the room at Mach 6, and do a bunch of funny stuff. So I'm holding Shiny and Thunder, which are the two robots, the big blue one and the red one. And I'm just messing around, right? And I put Thunder as he's flying, the big blue one, and I bring Shiny up and surf Thunder all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden the crew is seeing it on the thing and giggling and laughing. And I'm laughing. I'm all, whoa, 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 whoa. This is now the sequence I'm going to do. Let's shoot quick, everybody, before it goes away. It's not going away. But that's what you have. You have these spontaneous moments. And the show is full of ad-libs. It's full of mistakes. It's full of stuff that nobody could ever think of to put in a board or in layout or even to animation themselves because we don't have the time. It's just too fluid, right? And you capture it. You could capture it 5 ways, and then you get other ideas. How far can I push that? So that entertainment value, once I hand it off to my animators, it makes that discussion this short, right? The interpretation this short. And I go, you see what I was going for, but that ain't final. Now knock my socks off. My animators were doing a lot of, 20 to 30 seconds a week is what they were turning around with crazy ideas because they're suddenly now an audience because they saw it and they get ideas and so you've got this great, pass it forward kind of deal with all this energy, right? And we have it, so it's from a games kind of point of view, the Unreal becomes the hub. Right? So you could come up with a bunch of stuff and share that out. However, it's all optimized,
And you can keep development in the process for a long
time. Always. And that's something that I didn't realize was important was that discovery, right? There's so many stages. And since it's all in Unreal, at any point in time, I could come back and do a little tweak and fix things. I'd be an editorial, I'm all, man, I wish I got the shot. And even though we did 100 setups, I missed this thing, right? Enrico's on the stage shooting, I have almost a second unit going. I just call up Enrico and say, I need this kind of thing. Give me some, he'd knock off 4 or 5 shots. It'd be right back in editorial the next day. I'm all, that's the one, boom, and you're moving. So you're in this, it's not linear. It's circular. It's the spin of creativity until you're finished because we're all just looping around each other, and that's just fantastic experience.
Improv. Theatrical.
Improv.
Let's put some animation on it. So how does this animation, character animation, you guys went to school for it. That was really important. How do you think of it differently? And maybe, Elizabeth, maybe Brad, because you're, it's animation, feature film animation. How does this change things for you, this process?
I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do most of this stuff in school. I don't know. I think when you animate something on your own, there's the one thing is that it's hard to animate. It takes a long time, kind of like we've been talking about. I think, not to go back to the characters that are just on loops doing stuff in the background, but it's cool that nobody has to worry about that. Nobody has to worry about telling somebody this one character that's doing nothing, I don't know, make them eating a thing. They just decide on their own, which it's a lot of work to set it up, I guess, but I don't think the amount of you can get so many different iterations of whatever you want with that without the labor of animating that, and I think it's really fun.
Right, and again, back to discovery, back to finding stuff. And Brad, you're collecting this crew of people who've been in the feature animation business for a long time too. Do you find it, it's hard, right? Are you finding resistance? Are people just jumping in and you guys all put the suits on and playing? Where's the animation and all that?
So, I think the important distinction, I think for a while, motion capture had a really bad name in animation for, a long time. And sometimes, deservedly so, right? Motion capture doesn't supplant great animation principles that great character animators bring to our business that bring emotions to life for us. So really, there's a handoff to high-end character animators that can take these things to the next level. I think one of the things that we're all sort of surrounding, though, is there's a collaborative environment that happens prior to that point. Many of those animators will have seen a lot of the ideas, been cooking creatively on those ideas. And when they go to execute those ideas, it's already in it's beyond just getting a scene with T-posed blocking and having to have conversations with the animation director, and everybody else in order to get started. So I think it's prime the pumps, but the animation tools that we're developing that will work together with Unreal, they have to allow for the finest animation performances that can be done. There's no way around that.
No way around that, right. Somehow we've just eaten up most of this hour. But
and I had a song I prepared.
Okay,
maybe next time.
And a tap dance. You sing and I'll dance or something. So oftentimes we come here to Annecy and there's the new thing. It's VR, it's AR, it's the thing. It's, sat on panels. This is talking about a lot of those things. And, it's 3D. It's... and it, evolves and changes, but maybe it just kind of also, gets quieter. So I guess what I want to ask this panel, and maybe even over to you, Miles, for this, is this real? Is this happening? Is it real? Is it going to stay? Is it going to change things? Who wants that one?
Well, something has to change because the demand for, and Miles talked about it, the demand for story, it's a human need to have stories, right? And I think pandemic accelerated a lot of trends globally, and it shined a spotlight on how much when people need it, they turn to stories to understand life. And stories need to be recontextualized for our times. So I think there's a cynical point of view which says, there's nothing new and people are just remaking everything. But I think we have to remember that, the world is changing and there's new young people all the time who are coming up into a different world, and they need stories again that are freshened up. Even if it's an old myth, it sort of has new dimension now, right? So that's not going to go away. And there's a lot of people, I think you're hearing a lot of emphasis on speed here for creative, but also for just production and commercial realities. The more of this we want to do, the more I think we're looking to amplify the key talent to make these decisions that can then have a big team back them up. And I think part of the old process was an assumption that somehow through all the steps you'd get there, and you start needing a lot of people. And so all of us who are working with those crews are saying, man, is it hard to try to guide that creativity through such a huge schedule, through so many teams that each might bring something incredible to you, but equally you have to protect this tiny flame of what you're trying to do all the way through that process, or it gets blown out. So we have to change the way we're doing it for a lot of reasons. And I think this is real for sure. Yeah.
So I'll go super quick and pass it. This is it. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt about it. This is what is next. We're talking about something that's more instinctual for artists and more instinctual way to work. Everything about this technology and all of the conversations I have with people everywhere about this knows that this is it. So if you're not there, start heading in that direction, because this is, it's the game changer. And I think it's also going to unite us with a new distribution audience. There's a lot of talk about metaverse, but metaverse is defined, a lot by people who want to really interact with this stuff now. And that is our goal, is to give our characters, give our space over to people that can interact with this as the feature film comes out. Let's invigorate that audience to do what they want to do, and let's new generation artists are ahead of the technology. They always have been. I mean, and so this technology allows new folks that come up with these kinds of brains, with these kinds of tools that they've had at their fingertips, and we can really maximize those amazing creative brains for the next generation. And that's what our obligation is.
Nice.
There's always been a barrier to entry because the studios held all the keys and had the big crews and they had the machine to make these stories. Those are now dinosaurs, right? Because Unreal is available to everybody, right? And that barrier of entry and the speed, the risk, right? I mean, we're talking, you know, this is still conservative. You could cut these budgets in half. You could cut the time in half. And there is more demand for content. But more people are going to be able to access and tell their stories using this technology. So just that wave alone is going to happen, right? Because it's available and it's there. And from a studio point of view or a distributor point of view, they get more for their buck. So instead of spending $200 million on your one feature film, give me $200 million. I give you 2 feature films and four 10-episode series. You know, that's massive. So you spread that, and you get games, and you get interactive, and you get meta because you've created all this stuff in the engine, and that's really the hub. So why not?
And coming from the same creative source and energy, that fire that Adam references, not a tacked on thing at the end. Oh, right, we got to do that game. We got to do that. You know, it's all the potential is, because I think naturally we think that way. It all wants to come from the same bit of inspiration. Elizabeth.
I mean, I think it's definitely, it's also because you guys are evolving the engine to help people fit what they need. And that's one of the other important reasons I think it's sort of becoming such a big thing that people are using, because like you kind of like, it's collaborative. Like you're developing it with people that are giving you input on like, this would make it better for me to use, or this kind of thing would make it better for this person to use. And you listen to that and then you kind of adapt the engine, which I think is a huge thing. Cause like if you're working kind of together with the people that are creating it, then it's definitely going to keep going that way and just become something that a lot of people use. Yeah.
There's a natural evolution that's happening. I don't know if everybody sees it. We were all drawing 2D once, and then somebody came out with a computer and somebody said, well, we can use this computer to do this stuff, right? That was 35, 40 years ago. This is just the next evolutionary step. We went from a studio of 1,000 people to do a 2D animated movie to a studio of 200 to 300 people to do a movie. And what this is going to give us is 50 people to do a movie. That right there is insane. That doesn't mean people lose their jobs. That means more people get to tell more stories. And these tighter crews that have more authorship and ownership of the product that they're creating and the stories that they're telling. That to me is like super exciting.
I mean, the only other thing I want to say, because I know there's people developing out there, Epic is listening. And you know, I don't work for Epic, but I will tell you that our partnership with them, there are things that we're working on in our R&D and production pipeline on our own. Epic is listening. They're also helping us with areas that they know they want to develop that we're sort of, we have an interest in. So there is I think, one of the great things about whether or not it's been the Unreal Engine, some of the grants and so forth is there is somebody out there that's listening to Elizabeth's point that is trying to bring the artistic community into this direction that I think we all are inevitably heading. So, yeah.
Well, as a member of the Mutual Admiration Society, I think we're kind of coming up on the hour, but I want to thank all of you guys, not just for being here, but also for being brave enough to take this journey with us in general, because I know that it's not easy. I mean, this is not paint by numbers anymore. This is going back to people who are trying to figure out puzzles and are passionate about their work. So I know on behalf of the Unreal Engine and the entire team that supports you guys, we just want to thank you guys for being so brave.
Yep. Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for coming. It's great to see all these faces. And thank you, Anna C.